Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. I am Manny Carl, and welcome to another edition of the Pause Screen. Today, we're going to talk about 10 things that would immediately improve the division and the player base's quality of life and give players something to cheer for, at least in my opinion. So let's pause. So with all the negativity surrounding the game coming from the community on PvP and whatnot, I thought I'd make a quick video about some fixes that would actually improve the lives of all the players in the Division community. Some of these might be easier said than done, but some of them make sense on various levels. I've looked at a lot of posts and a lot of stuff online, and these are some of the things that I came up with that I think would be game changers if Massive went ahead and implemented. I don't have any line or anything like that would say, hey, these are going to happen, but these are the things that I wish would happen based on what the community feedback. So let's go ahead, get into number 10, enemy AI. And most of these are going to surround enemy AI. So that's just a given. I think one of the worst things in the game is the enemy AI right now. Even if they fix what they said they're going to fix, it's still going to be pretty bad. So let's go ahead and talk about enemy AI. And it's been the bane of the Division community since Division 1. And it's no doubt one of the reasons the game seems difficult. The AI seems to have a self-awareness that tells it, we have the advantage, we have more armor than you can't stop us. So if you remove the AI and put in, say, a Terminator, the game would feel fair. It would feel much more fair than what we have now. Terminators are machines that have pinpoint accuracy and can take a lot of damage that would be bullet spongy. The first item that I would change is that the enemies don't rush players in the open. They kind of have more of an awareness that they might die if they run out in the open, and you know, like a Terminator that knows you can't kill it. That's what's going on right now. It thinks that, hey, you can't kill us. We're just going to run out there. It doesn't matter whether it's red, purple, yellow. They just do it. When laid out in a tactical position, the player, many enemies would just simply work in a U formation to kind of surround it and flank the player. This is something that happens right now in the game, but it happens in a way that seems illogical. While a few will use the U formation to flank the player, some elite enemies will just head straight down the middle of the path without regard to any safety or any kind of tactical ability. They just kind of just trot down the middle. Even in the apocalypse, self-preservation seems to evade these enemies. They don't seem to care about their life at all. They just want to rush up and kill you. And we seemingly gun them down like they're robot clones. Maybe they are robots. Who knows? We don't know. I have personally killed more hyenas than there are troops in the Cuban army based on my stats. I mean, that's a lot of people. It's kind of strange how they have a broad reserve, so it would make a lot of sense that these are just robots or clones or whatever, and they have some factory. But if the enemies utilized positions based on military strategy instead of one of awareness of how much armor they have and how much damage they could do, the game would lose its spongy enemy mentality, and instead enemies would take time to kill simply because they're using more of a self-preservation method in hiding in cover instead of just running out in the open. This brings me to my next point, which is number 9. Enemy AI is smart. It's too smart. And they are so smart that anytime you aim at an enemy, they will duck behind cover. You can aim at them, and they will just hide behind cover until you stop aiming at them. They will continue to hide for as long as you aim at them. They somehow are aware of the aiming mechanics, and I don't understand how they're aware of this mechanic. And they will stay hidden for as long as you are ADSing. If you take a sniper rifle, aim at a guy, they will just stay down. They will not pop up. And I mean, some of them will, some of them are not as smart. They'll pop up after like a minute or so, but most of them will stay down. And that it's most noticeable with the sniper rifle. This really breaks the fourth wall in the game. I understand staying down in cover because you're being targeted, but how do they know? How do they know they're being aimed at? That takes away some of the tactical ability of the AI. Dumbing down the AI so they couldn't use some sort of telekinesis or ESP to detect that the player was aiming at them would remove a bit of the difficulty in doing this. So that brings me to number 8. In dumbing down the AI, we also remove the ability to react at the drop of a hat. The reaction time is, bar none, supernatural. I've never played a game where once you engage the enemy, they react without hesitation. I could see this with the Black Tusk. They're trained operatives, and even, well, actually the story is that they're just thugs off the street that they pick up. But with street thugs like the Hyenas Militia, like the True Sons, or the Gothics like the Outcasts, if they saw a person get shot, it would take them a few seconds to register. Like, they're not gonna see somebody get shot and go, "Whoa, I better run over there," in a split second. They would need to look around for a bit, wonder what's going on. The factions in this game react as though they are always aware of the enemies, and they seem like something only an AI simulation would be able to do. Something out of a computer simulation. That is not a focus of realism that is brought to the game. And so removing their drop of a hat. I mean, if you shoot at them, they don't even like stutter or do anything. If you're shooting at them, they can run at a full sprint while you're tagging them 100% of the time and get to cover. This is something that needs to change. If you're looking at a game and saying that it has an element of realism to it, there needs to be some sort of stagger. If you shoot them in the leg, they drop to their knees. If you shoot them, they kind of fumble when they're running. Something that tells us that they are in that area and that they're not just some sort of robot, that's running like the T-1000. And so let's go on to number 7. And on the fact that this is the case, it would be a huge improvement if the enemies once shot at were fully trained in on the exact spot that the agent was. 100% of the time, they are just boom. They know exactly where you were. The way they react now is that once the agent shoots, I mean, they could miss nothing. All they gotta do is shoot their gun in the air. Their spot might as well be a giant beacon for the enemy on the map. And I mean, what is going on here? How is it that every single enemy, there could be 50 enemies on the map and they would know exactly where the agent is based on the shot? There's no looking around. There's no, hey, what's going on? There's nothing. It's immediately boom. There's the agent. We know exactly where he is, and anyone that comes after that, you gun down one enemy, and the next one runs out from God knows where exactly they're hiding from, the secret clone factory that these guys are coming out of, and they know exactly where you are. It doesn't even matter. It's like they have some sort of radio that gives a location, and they can see through walls. It's like they have some sort of thermal scope or something that they can see the exact body outline. So funny enough, you can actually sneak up on them within inches, and there's a little thing that pops up over their head with an eye that says they can see you. But as long as you duck in before they're fully detected, you're in the clear. They can't see you. I mean, you could be inches away from them. It's hilarious. So you shoot at them and they can see you, from 100 yards away. They can see you and shoot you with 100% accuracy. But if you sneak up on them, they can't see 5 feet in front of their faces. But that's just, they have some sort of psychic ability to use ESP, and they're using the Force to know your exact location with pinpoint accuracy. And one of the problems that I already mentioned that makes this game way harder than it needs to be. That's one of the issues, is that the difficulty ramps up because of this issue. But speaking of pinpoint accuracy, ever been hiding behind a wall and see a grenade fly through the air at you in slow motion and head directly for right in front of you or directly behind you? I mean, never to the side or anywhere not near you. It's a 100% shot towards your body. This could be improved, and I would much prefer it to be a little bit more realistic than to be utilized on occasions where the AI makes a bad throw or they throw it around a corner to actually try and hit you. Instead, they are pinpointing the player body. There's nothing else they're shooting at. They're using a player as an anchor, and they are targeting it like a robot would instead of how an actual person would. Creating a random AI throw pattern would actually make this feel less robotic and more intuitive, even anticipating where to throw the grenade at times based on the player's movement or where they might move to. This would actually make it feel like these aren't just robot AI. These are actually real people that are doing this, but that's not really it. And you don't really get that feeling that they're actual people. That's why it's so easy to gun these people down. I mean, the Agent Kilso is just on a rampant killing spree of just the only way that you can finish a mission is to murder people. That is the prime directive of the Division, is to murder people. That is it. That is the main goal of the Division. We can talk about that in another video, because we got to get on to number 5. And finally, I promise this is the final AI tweak that would hugely improve the game. health and reduce the accuracy over time. Recoil is very real, and these are untrained thugs and militia. To think that they would have the ability to fire a weapon like a trained soldier is a bit out of the ordinary. They would need to maintain the same accuracy over time as they do when they first start firing. They should not go from 10% accuracy when they first start shooting you to 100% accuracy after a few seconds. They should not have the 100% accuracy when you go into full cover and move. That's just not the way this thing works. I mean, the bullets go directly at you, but that would be fixed by being able to have this line of sight awareness built in, where the enemies would only be able to target you based on whether or not they know exactly where you are or can see you. You should be able to move and them not be able to detect you. Now, let's move on to number 4. Number 4, moving on to things that would increase the fun, lessen frustration for players, is making adjustments to the recalibration station. And this is a whole mess of things that went wrong with this. In Division 1, recalibration was something totally different. This is 100% the worst way that it could have been implemented into the game. I understand why they did it, but it is absolutely terrible. It needs to be a 100% rework of it. Understandable that there is a cap on what we can recalibrate. That is a fun way to reduce the overall effectiveness of builds that players can make, and basically underscore how you can get to BOP. The problem is that if you have a piece of gear, it can have a stat on it. So for example, we use my chest piece or something. It has a 23.5% headshot damage. How a chest piece can have that damage on it, I have no idea, but let's just go with it. It's a fictional game. This is a crazy amount of damage. And let's say it has a partner attribute of 5% critical hit damage. So I only have two pieces on here. It has 23.5% headshot damage and 5% critical hit damage. Now, if we wanted to put more headshot damage on it, we would need to find a piece of gear that had higher headshot damage stat and then see if we could roll it onto the gear. Now, normally, if we had a piece of gear that had 30% headshot damage on it, it would probably be capped at, say, adding it would be 27% that we could actually use that would be feasible. So we'd go from 23.5 to 27, even though the other piece of gear had 30% on it. Now, let's say that we had the same piece of gear has a low roll of 10% headshot damage and 5% critical hit damage, or critical hit chance, whatever I said before, just go ahead. And we have that same 30% headshot damage, and we try to roll it onto that. If we recalibrate that piece of gear, it would cap out at, say, 15 or 16%. With that fact, the gear score isn't calculated based on the overall gear piece or their armor roll. There would be no cap on re-rolling stats on that item. I think we need to remove that cap. You should be able to put different items on without a cap, or even just put something like a mathematical algorithm onto that piece of item so that each number is assigned a value. But that it shouldn't be that I find a chest piece and have 23.5% headshot damage and 5% critical hit damage, and I can't roll it any higher. It should have a minimum stat and a maximum stat on it. And when you take away 1 or 2 pieces of the top stat, you could add to the bottom stat or whatnot. But this cap on recalibration, it needs to go. It's one of the worst implementations of the recalibration station. I don't agree with it. I understand that they're trying to make it so people aren't making these OP builds, but you need to not cap the same gear piece, because it doesn't make any sense to not be able to roll a 27%. So say I have a 500 gear score chest piece. I have 2 of them. I have one that has 10% headshot damage and one that has 23% headshot damage. And I have this gear piece over here that has 30%. I should be able to roll the same amount of percentage onto each of those gear pieces as I could. But right now, I can't. You can't do that. It maxes out at like 5 points above whatever the percentage is that you have on the lowest roll. That's not the way this should work. I should be able to try and roll for a chance to get the entire 30% headshot damage on it, or at least max it out both of them equally, so that the 10% could be maxed out at 27 and the 23.5% could be maxed out at 27, so that there is a minimum gear stat and a maximum gear stat. It needs to be changed. Whatever it is, I think right now gear is probably one of the things that is the worst in this game, and it needs to be adjusted. So with that said, let's move on to number 3. We need to make gear score an overall score of how powerful the armor is, or the actual gear piece, not the armor. This way, gear score 500 would be the best drops. When I see a gear score of 500 drop on an item, I should automatically assume that is going to be the best thing I could get. And it would be noticeable that you have some of the highest rolled stats possible on those gear sets. And instead of getting a piece of 500 gear and seeing that your 450 gear score stats were far better, the problem here is that the gear score is needed to move up in the world tiers. Why is it that gear score isn't an indication of power, but is used to bottleneck you and make you feel like you need to start over at each world tier, instead of using it as a way to increase your power for your character? I don't understand why it is the way it is or how it's calculated. The character system should be progressive, but right now, when you reach gear score 450, it feels like that it was intended as the end game gear score, and then anything above that is it's going to be iffy as to whether it's better or worse. Your weapon and your brand sets barely become more powerful as you reach 500, but to move up, you need to raise your gear score, or else you can't do some of the strongholds, despite being strong enough at 450. But you're able to take on these enemies. This is one of the main reasons why I tell people that after 475, gear score is merely a number and not an indicator of strength or how good you are or how good your equipment is. Weapons at 475 are roughly the same, if not better, than some of the gear at 500. You could literally have a 475 rifle that has better stats than a rifle at 500. It's 100% truth right there. I believe this has to do with the main bonus perk on the weapons set at a different number on gear. So what I'm saying is that originally weapons were based on with a gear score on the bonus that was on the weapon, but because they normalized it at the very end, somebody made the decision to normalize those weapons at the very top, because if you notice, you can actually re-roll that at the recalibration station, but there's no point to, because everything from a certain aspect like 450 to 500 has the exact same item rolled on it. There's no variation in that number. There's everything, marksman rifle, 138 or 135% headshot damage. There's no deviation from that number. It's all been normalized in that range to make weapon drops more normalized stat structure. And so I believe that originally this is why weapons are able to be recalibrated but not be increased in gear score. Originally, we were able to increase them in gear score by adding to that number, but because the talents don't actually raise your gear score, only that attribute up there would. That's why it's kind of in that sense of not being able to do that. So let's go on to number 2, crafting and recalibration. One last thing about that. Sure, you are crafting replicas. I get that. But it seems absurd that everything you do in crafting and recalibration is considered useful. That's Massive's words, not mine. Massive said that this time around, crafting would be a useful skill. Once you get to 500, your gear maxes out. The craftable gear maxes out at 490, making it an unviable skill, except for, talking about the fact that gear score from like 475 onward actually makes no difference. But in terms of crafting, it's an unviable skill. Once again, in terms of that, to make things worse, you can't recalibrate those items to actually be useful. So you're making an item in order to do what? To get crafting materials, to get certain crafting materials, because the drops at 500 are going to be sometimes better, sometimes worse, but you're going to be able to actually get better gear. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to actually craft in the game once you reach the end game. These items should be available, and there should be a chance to actually recalibrate them when you're doing it. So I think that we need to be able to re-roll our trash roll gear. Most of the stuff we pick up, even from the loot drops, even from the crafting station, it's all trash. A lot of this is garbage loot. I'm at the point where I was in the Division 2, where I have my gear set build that I've built, and I have it's really well done, and now I'm just looking for whatever to basically increase that and make it better. And so almost everything I have is going to be min-max almost, and there's nothing I'm picking up that's actually worth anything. It's all trash loot. So I keep a couple things every once in a while based on that, but pretty much I'm done picking up trash. I mean, it's all trash at this point. And I don't like feeling like that, because we're at the end game, and the gear sets and the brand sets, it's all trash, and all I'm doing is looking for, a 1% increase in something to get all of my stuff to gear 515. So that's really what it is. These items, if you're crafting them at 490, they need to be able to be recalibrated so that we can make them better. So number one, kudos to you if you've made it this far. I would love to say that these are in some sort of order of importance, but they really aren't. I just put the numbers down, added what I thought, things would make the game better, kind of put it in some sort of structure so that kind of flowed together. So finally, without further ado, the last part of this is scaling. Yes, and I'm talking about difficulty scaling, not selecting the difficulty when you select the level normal, hard, or challenging. I'm talking about adding a single group member, 2 group members, 3 group members to the group and having the level scale based on that. I've done a lot of 2, 3, and 4 member groups, and I gotta say, it feels like there needs to be a huge balance pass on the group scaling. I've soloed Roosevelt Island on challenging by myself. It's super easy to do when you have the right build. If you build a nice set, you can do it on by yourself, no problem. But you add 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people on normal, and it just goes through the roof. It is set to heroic, basically. The difficulty of the group dynamics is off by a large margin. I shouldn't have to struggle killing enemies on normal because I've added 4 people that there's 4 people in my group. In a group of 4 agents, I hear people running out of ammo. They're like, I'm out of ammo, and it's on normal. What is going on here? It should not go up to challenging just because there's 4 players. The enemies seem to bump up in power from T800s to friggin' T1000s, and that's just with 4 people on normal. My sniper does almost 800,000 damage. I mean, it does an amazing amount, and it does it to elite enemies and named enemies, and that's not even enough to kill an elite on normal with 4 players, despite the fact that I can one-shot an elite with this build in the firing range and 2-shot named enemies in the wild. The balance is off, and when adding multiple people to a group and fixing this item by adding in scalable enemies, it's almost impossible, and you get frustrated. And adding people, you should be having fun with 4 people. It shouldn't be a frustration. I shouldn't need to go into matchmaking and go, oh great, I'm going to get a bunch of noobs who don't know what they're doing, and it's going to be insanely hard on normal, and we're not going to be able to finish it because they don't know what they're doing. This is not the way this game needs to be played. This is an insane and gross incompetence of what's going on here. Fixing the scaling issue with 4 people is going to be insanely helpful to the player base. It should feel like you're having a good time on normal, you're doing a hard time on hard, and it's going to be challenging on challenging. And that's the way it should feel. It shouldn't feel like a friggin' heroic battle with 4 players. It just shouldn't. I shouldn't have to waste a whole 500 clips and have these just giant sponges soaking up so many bullets and running out of bullets on normal. It's insane to do that. An elite enemy on normal with 4 players should not equal a challenging enemy. I mean, you have to focus fire all 4 people on there to make it feel like it's a normal person. I mean, that's just the way it is. The balance is off by a large margin when adding multiple people to a group, and fixing this item and adding in scalable enemies is going to fix this grossly. I mean, it's going to be such a huge benefit to the player base if this can get fixed. Enemies on normal should not be the same as normal enemies in solo. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. There should be more of them. They shouldn't have more armor. They shouldn't have more HP. There should just be more enemies in general. There shouldn't be, and I've said this before, the problem with that this game has is that they think that scaling up difficulty means adding more hit points, adding more armor, and adding more DPS from the enemy instead of adding in more of the enemies. There should be more enemies versus harder enemies. That's the way it should be. It's like a zombie game. Like, you have these zombies, and the sheer force of the amount of them is what makes the game difficult. It's not the fact that you can't kill them. It's that it's hard because you're getting overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. The difficulty just shouldn't ramp up to near impossible scaling enemies for the fight. So in solo, you fight 5, duos 8, triples 10, and 4 players you see 15 enemies. It should not scale up the amount of weapon damage you need to kill these enemies. That's not the way it goes. That's not how these fights should be. I'm running over my time. I apologize. Normally I try to keep these to under 20 minutes. We're going over. I'm going to try and cut it down in the editing room so that this can be a little bit better. But let's go ahead. I have one bonus item. So because this just makes me like one bonus item. So I'm going to add in 11. So let's get back and we're going to back the truck up and add a bonus item here. Something I forgot to say in the firing range, because this is something that irks me to no end. The firing range is like the Trump wing of the game. Like, Trump basically went down and created the firing range. It's fake news. It doesn't accurately represent the true damage that you're doing out in the wild and the true nature of the damage done in the game. In the firing range, I can 2-shot a named elite. But what difficulty is that on? Is it on normal? Is it on hard? Is it on challenging? I should be able to adjust those things in the firing range so I know exactly what it is. In the open world, I can 2-shot a named elite, but in levels with anything higher than normal, this changes everything and completely changes the damage structure. Sure, the damage that I'm showing in there might be accurate, but I should be able to know, hey, it takes me 5 clips on challenging to take down an enemy. And so the firing range isn't really a valid explanation. We need an accurate world representation for each situation. So my suggestion would be to add difficulty levels to the firing range so I know that if a named elite comes out on, say, challenging, the damage I'm doing to it is going to be the damage that I see in the range. That's something that there is. I see a lot of these guys out there putting out these videos with 3 million DPS for my AR. That's headshot damage, dude. That's not actual DPS that you're doing. 90% of your shots are not going to be headshot. The guy's going to be moving. He's going to be ducking and weaving. You're not going to get headshots. I don't appreciate the clickbait videos that you guys are putting out. This goes to Nick and to Willis Gaming. Both those people are grossly overstating what their builds do. They are not the best builds in the game. I've seen a lot of people that just because you can do 3 million headshot damage doesn't mean you're actually going to do that in a fight. So you can do that gear, but unless you're using an aimbot to hit those headshots, that's just the way it's going to be. Anyways, I'm over 25 minutes now, so let's go ahead and we're gonna back this up. We're gonna get done. We're gonna do our business. So thank you guys so much for watching this. If you guys have any comments on other things that you think would be quality of life improvements that would help with the enjoyment of this game outside of PvP. Notice I didn't talk about PvP at all. I want to stay away from that hot topic. That thing is on fire right now, and I just don't think it's something that I should be talking about right now. It is literally 10% of the game. It doesn't matter to me. I enjoy the PvP the way it is. I have no idea what anybody else is talking about. It does not matter to me, so I'm leaving it out of this video. Maybe I'll make a new PvP video down the road, but if you want something that really accurately represents the toxicity or the way PvP is, go take a look at Twitter. Go take a look at some of the videos being put out based on PvP. If you don't think that PvP is good, they're going to be great videos and great comments for you. If you think that PvP is good in there, then they're going to be toxic for you. There is a huge divide in the community. I don't want to be a part of it. I want to help with the positivity in the community. I want to bring people together, and that is really on the PvE side of things because that is the majority of what people are playing in the game. So thank you guys for watching that. Please subscribe, hit that like button, turn on the notification bell if you guys want more of these videos. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel as always. I enjoy you guys' comments. I read every single one, and I will try to respond to them. And so that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for watching. We'll have a new video here shortly. I'm going to try and put this one out in the next as soon as possible. But until then, for all of us here at Pause Screen and the Pause Screen, I'm Manny Carl. Unpause.